5 men closed the space around Bruce Lee like a door slamming shut. "Skinny little movie boy," the leader said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Bruce didn't argue. He just looked up, and the laughter thinned out. If you like stories where arrogance meets real power, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Los Angeles County, early 1970s. A low-ceiling gym tucked behind a strip of laundromats and pawn shops, the kind of place where the neon outside lies about how safe the street is. The sign on the door said "Open Mat Night" in fading marker. Inside, the air was sweat, old canvas, and cheap disinfectant that never quite won. There were no posters of champions, only dents in the drywall and a ring with ropes that had seen too many elbows scrape them. A crowd packed around the mat anyway. Fighters, students, curious spectators, and a few men who didn't look like they trained at all, but still acted like they owned the room. They leaned on the walls with their arms folded, smirking at anyone who looked nervous. Bruce came in like he belonged nowhere and everywhere. Dark jacket, plain slacks, no entourage, no attention-seeking. He moved through the door without making a show of it, scanning the space once, not with suspicion, but with that calm, precise awareness that made rooms feel smaller. Most people didn't recognize him, not in a place like this. Bruce Lee was a name on screens, a blur of hands, something you argued about. In here, fame didn't buy you anything. In here, size did. He didn't come to prove anything. He came because he always came, when there was skill to observe, pressure to study, egos to measure. He found a spot near the back, close to the exit, and leaned against a support beam where the light was dimmer. A few heads turned, then turned away. He looked like a lean Chinese guy who could have been anybody's cousin. The night's host stepped into the center and clapped twice for attention. Vic Dalton. That was the name he used when he wanted it to travel. A karate instructor with a polished smile and a loud voice, the kind of man who knew exactly where to stand, so the room felt like it faced him. He wore his black belt over jeans, because belts meant more when they weren't paired with a full uniform. His students stood behind him like props. Vic held up his hands like a preacher calming a crowd. "Rules are simple," he said. "Respect the mat, keep it clean. If you get dropped, you get up, you shake hands, you learn. No grudges." The crowd made agreeable noises. Vic soaked it in, then let his grin widen as if he was doing them a favor by breathing the same air. "And since we got some new faces tonight," he added, "we're doing something special, a little challenge." That word, challenge, tightened the room. Men straightened. Someone muttered, "Here we go." Vic paced slowly, enjoying the silence he was creating. "I've been hearing a lot of talk lately," he said. "A lot of movie talk, a lot of kung fu talk. Guys saying they can hit too fast to see, saying they got secret techniques, saying karate's old-fashioned." A few people laughed. A few looked around to see who the laugh was aimed at. Vic lifted his chin toward the crowd like he was asking them to be reasonable. "I'm not here to disrespect anybody's culture. I love culture. I love movies. I love choreography." He let that last word hang like an insult in silk wrapping. "But if you want to call what you do fighting," he continued, voice sharpening, "then you step on the mat and you show it. Not in slow motion, not with a camera, not with a stuntman who falls when you tell him to." More laughter now, the kind that wasn't funny, just eager. Bruce stayed still. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. His eyes stayed on Vic as if Vic was a problem being solved quietly. Vic scanned the room, pretending he was searching for someone brave. His gaze slid over big shoulders, over clenched jaws, over men who wanted to be noticed, and then it landed on the back corner where Bruce stood. Vic's smile turned predatory. "Oh, look at that." The crowd followed his line of sight. Faces turned. People leaned to see. Vic pointed, arms straight like he'd caught something crawling. "My man back there. Yeah, you. Come on, don't hide." Bruce didn't move at first. He didn't because Vic wasn't speaking to him like a person. He was speaking to him like an object, and Bruce wasn't in the habit of obeying objects. Vic's voice rose. "Come on, Skinny, you hear me? This is a fighting gym, not a movie theater." A ripple of laughter ran through the room again, louder than before. It wasn't just Vic now. It was the room deciding what Bruce was. Bruce pushed off the beam and stepped forward, not rushed, not reluctant. He walked through the crowd in a straight line. People made space without knowing why. Not respect yet. Something else. A small instinct that something was wrong about their certainty. He stopped a few feet from the mat. Under the harsh ceiling lights, he looked even leaner, compact, coiled, not a body that screamed dominance, but a body that looked like it belonged to someone who used it precisely. Vic looked him up and down with open amusement. "You here to watch, or you here to learn?" Bruce's voice was quiet when he answered. "I'm here." That was all. No explanation, no apology, no energy spent making himself acceptable. Vic chuckled and turned to the crowd, as if Bruce had just told a joke. "He's here, folks." The crowd laughed again, and Vic fed off it. "What's your style, man? Wing something? Or you just do the little finger poke stuff?" Bruce didn't react. He glanced at the mat, then back to Vic. "If someone wants to train, they train. If someone wants to talk, they talk." Vic's smile twitched, because for a second the room went quieter. The line wasn't aggressive, but it didn't bend. It didn't entertain Vic's game. Vic stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was being generous. "Listen, I don't know you," he said, "but you walk in here looking like a stiff breeze could fold you in half, and you got that calm face like you're better than everybody." He tapped Bruce's chest with 2 fingers, not hard, but public. A small humiliation delivered with confidence. Bruce didn't look down at the fingers. He looked at Vic's eyes. Vic kept smiling, but now it was tighter. "We get a lot of tourists, a lot of guys who watched a film and think they're dangerous, so I'll make it easy. You can leave right now, no problem. Or," he turned his head slightly so the crowd heard every word, "or you can step on the mat and show everybody that you're not just a skinny guy pretending." A few people who actually trained shifted uncomfortably. Open mat night wasn't supposed to be a stage for cheap dismantling, but nobody wanted to be the one to say it. Nobody wanted Vic's attention on them. Bruce stood there, shoulders relaxed, breathing steady. He wasn't trapped yet, but he could feel the room building a trap around him anyway. Expectations, laughter, the hungry thrill of seeing someone get put in place. From the left side of the room, 5 men peeled off the wall. They hadn't been watching the sparring. They'd been watching the crowd. Leather jackets, heavy boots, faces that carried the easy boredom of men who hurt people for fun and called it enforcing respect. They moved in a loose arc that didn't look like a formation until you noticed there was no longer a clear path behind Bruce. Vic didn't look at them directly. He didn't have to. He kept his eyes on Bruce like this was still friendly, like the pressure wasn't being applied from all sides. "Here's what we're going to do," Vic said, voice brightening as if he'd just invented something exciting. "A quick little public test, nothing crazy, 1 exchange. You show something real, we clap, you go home a hero. Or you admit you're just a fanboy and you walk out with your pride intact." One of the 5 men behind Bruce snorted. Another leaned in close enough that Bruce could smell cigarettes and stale beer. "Pride intact," the man repeated, amused. "That's generous." The leader, broad shoulders, shaved head, a gold chain that caught the light, stepped into Bruce's peripheral vision and stopped at the edge of his space. He didn't touch Bruce yet. He just stood where the exit used to be. Bruce turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the new geometry of the room. 5 bodies, 1 door, a crowd that wanted a show, a rival who wanted a trophy. Vic spread his hands. "So what's it going to be, man? You going to do the kung fu magic? Or you going to be smart and walk away before somebody gets embarrassed?" Bruce looked at Vic, then at the faces in the crowd. People holding their breath without realizing they were. People ready to laugh on command. Then Bruce's eyes returned to Vic and his voice stayed calm. "I don't mind a test," he said, "but I won't perform for insults." Vic laughed, too loud, too fast, trying to crush the line before it grew legs. "Insults? Come on, it's just words." Behind Bruce, the shaved-head leader finally spoke again, soft and certain. "Words are how you find out what you are." Bruce didn't move away from him. He didn't stiffen. He simply let the silence settle for half a second longer than the room liked. And that was when the crowd began to feel it, before a punch was thrown, before anything happened, that the skinny guy wasn't the one in danger of losing control. Vic Dalton didn't step back when the 5 men closed in. He stepped sideways, like a ring announcer giving the audience a better angle, like this was always the plan, and he was proud of how clean it looked from the outside. "See?" Vic said, smiling at the crowd. Nobody's forcing anything. It's a choice. This is a gym. This is honesty. The shaved-head leader behind Bruce rocked on his heels, loose, comfortable. He looked Bruce up and down the way men do when they think the math is already done. Honesty, he repeated, tasting the word like it was a joke. All right. Be honest with us, Skinny. You train or you just watch other men train? Bruce didn't answer him, not because he was afraid to, because answering would have made the man important. Bruce's attention stayed on Vic. You wanted a test, Bruce said, calm, clear. So make it a test? Vic's eyebrows lifted. Oh, we're negotiating now. A laugh rolled through the room, but it came out thinner. People weren't sure if they were laughing at Bruce anymore, or laughing because Vic needed them to. Bruce nodded once, small. One exchange. Vic blinked. One exchange. One person attacks, Bruce said. I respond. Then it's done. The shaved-head leader chuckled, leaning closer. This guy thinks he's setting rules. Another of the five, thick forearms, knuckles scarred, reached out and tugged the back of Bruce's jacket like he was checking fabric. Not hard, but disrespectful. A public claim. Feels light, the man said. Like you. Bruce didn't turn. He didn't flinch. But his posture changed by a degree. Weight settling, spine aligning. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet adjustment that made him feel heavier without adding a pound. Vic saw it, and didn't like that he saw it. You hear him? Vic said to the crowd, voice bright, fast. One exchange. That's cute. That's what guys say when they're scared of getting exposed. He paced in a tight circle on the edge of the mat, feeding the room. Let me tell you something about fighters. Real fighters don't come with conditions. Real fighters don't come with rules they wrote in their head. Real fighters step in and... The shaved-head leader interrupted, bored. You talk too much. He stepped fully into Bruce's space now, shoulder almost touching. Close enough for intimidation to be physical without being a punch. You want one exchange? He said. Fine. I'll exchange my hand with your face. A few people in the crowd made noises, half laughter, half nerves. Someone near the back muttered, This is getting stupid. A man in a gray hoodie, one of the actual trainers, older, with cauliflower ear and the tired look of someone who'd broken up too many fights, started to move forward. Hey, he said, trying to sound casual. Let's keep it. Vic snapped his head toward him. Coach, relax. Nobody's bleeding. This is learning. The trainer hesitated. It wasn't fear. It was the math of the room. 5 men who didn't care about the gym, a crowd that wanted a story, a host who wanted a scalp. The trainer stopped because he could feel how quickly the room would turn on him if he became the obstacle. One of the thugs made it uglier. He walked past Bruce's shoulder with a plastic cup in his hand and let the drink tip, accidentally, splashing down Bruce's sleeve and across the front of his shirt. Sticky, dark. It smelled like cheap soda and something sharper. Oops, the thug said, not sorry. My bad. Laughter erupted again, louder, because it gave the crowd permission to be cruel. Bruce looked down at the wet fabric, then back up. He didn't wipe it. He didn't shake it off. He let it be there, like a stain was nothing compared to what he was measuring. Vic watched that and leaned in, voice dropping, intimate now, meant only for Bruce, but loud enough for the front row to hear. You don't want to perform for insults, Vic said. Then don't stand there and take them. Step up and show us what you are. Bruce's eyes stayed level. I'm not here to entertain your ego. Vic's face tightened for a flicker of a second before he covered it with a grin. My ego? No. This is the people's ego. They want to know if the legend is real. He lifted his voice again. Listen, everybody. Here's what we're doing. Simple. No ambush. No cheap shots. The crowd stirred at the word ambush because they all understood what was happening without wanting to admit it. Vic continued anyway, spinning reality into something respectable. We're going to put him on the mat. He picks one of these guys, one exchange, like he asked. If he's real, he proves it. If he's not, he walks out and nobody touches him. Fair, the shaved-head leader laughed. Nobody touches him. That's adorable. Bruce looked at Vic. If you want fair, then keep your hands off me until it starts. Vic spread his hands like he was offended by the accusation. Of course. But as he said it, the thug with scarred knuckles reached out again, this time gripping Bruce's jacket at the shoulder and giving him a small shake, just enough to make it clear he could. Bruce finally turned his head, not quickly, not angry, just enough to look directly at the man's hand. Then, Bruce looked at the man's face. "Take it off," Bruce said. Quiet. The thug grinned wider. "Or what?" Bruce didn't answer the "or what." He did something else. He stepped forward onto the mat. Just one step. It wasn't dramatic, but it changed the room the way weather changes when a storm decides to arrive. Because Bruce didn't step like a man walking. He stepped like a line being drawn. The 5 men hesitated without realizing they were hesitating. Their bodies paused to recalculate. Vic saw the pause and rushed to crush it. "There we go! That's what I'm talking about!" Bruce reached up and unzipped his jacket. He slid it off his shoulders and folded it neatly, precise, like he was putting away a tool. He placed it on a chair at the edge of the mat so carefully it looked ceremonial. He didn't roll his shoulders, didn't bounce, didn't glare. He stood with his hands relaxed at his sides, loose like he wasn't about to do anything at all. The shaved-head leader stepped onto the mat with a grin that had too much confidence in it. "This is your one exchange?" he asked. "You just stand there?" Bruce nodded. "You wanted honesty." The leader lifted his hands, half boxing stance, half street posture. He wasn't trained. He was used to size doing the work for him. "What's your name, Skinny?" Bruce didn't answer. Vic laughed into the silence. "He's too humble. Or too scared." The leader jabbed a finger toward Bruce's chest. "Say your name." Bruce's eyes didn't move. "Start." The leader's grin turned sharp. "All right." He looked at the crowd, soaking up the attention, then took a big step forward like he was walking into a bully's favorite moment. His hand came out fast, not fast in the way skill is fast, but fast in the way a man swings when he expects the other man to flinch. The room leaned in, and Bruce moved, not backward, not away, into it. A small shift of his hips, a slip of his head, and then his right hand cut across the space with a sound that didn't match how little it looked. A short strike, compact, like the room itself had blinked. The leader's breath left him in a hard, ugly burst. His shoulders folded. His knees lost their argument with gravity. He stumbled 2 steps like he was trying to keep dignity, then dropped to one knee, palm on the mat, eyes wide and confused, as if he'd just been hit by something he couldn't see. No one cheered. No one laughed. The soda drip from Bruce's sleeve hit the mat in the silence, one slow drop at a time, and the crowd finally understood they were not watching a performance. For a full second, the shaved-head leader stayed on one knee like the mat had glued him there. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He wasn't searching for a comeback. He was trying to locate his lungs. The crowd didn't know what to do with silence. They'd come for laughter, for swagger, for the familiar rhythm of a smaller man getting taught a lesson. But now they were watching a large man blink at the floor like the rules of his body had changed. Vic Dalton forced a laugh, high and quick. Okay, that was..." He pointed like he could turn it into a joke. "That was a good slap, all right? He's got fast hands. You happy? One exchange." Bruce didn't look at Vic. His eyes stayed on the men around him because he could feel the room trying to cheat. Scar-Knuckles stepped forward, jaw clenched. He sucker punched him. "He started it," someone in the crowd muttered, not loudly, but loud enough that people heard and didn't disagree. The leader on one knee tried to stand. His legs didn't cooperate the first time. He pushed up, staggered, then caught himself. His face was turning a shade that wasn't anger yet, more like shock curdling into embarrassment. Behind him, another thug, taller, thick neck, hair slicked back, shifted his weight like he was about to solve the situation the only way he understood, by swinging. "Don't," Bruce said. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was information delivered calmly. The slick-haired thug laughed anyway, the way men laugh when they need to prove they didn't just feel fear. "Don't what?" He took a step in, shoulder lowering, telegraphing a big right hand. Not clean technique, just power, wide, meant to smash through Bruce's guard and make the room clap. Bruce didn't raise his hands in some dramatic defense. He stepped half a foot to the outside, so small it looked like he'd barely moved, and the punch cut through empty air where his head had been. Then Bruce's foot snapped out, low, fast, a kick to the thigh that landed with a dull private sound, bone into muscle with surgical intent. The slick-haired thug's leg buckled before his brain could explain why. His swing finished late, uncontrolled, and he had to hop to keep from falling. His face changed as pain arrived like a delayed bill. Bruce didn't chase him. He didn't add anything. He simply stood where he had stood, balanced, ready, as if the kick was just punctuation. Now, Scar Knuckles couldn't pretend it was luck. He came forward hard, trying to crowd Bruce, trying to make speed irrelevant by making distance disappear. His hands reached, aiming for Bruce's shoulders, his shirt, anything he could grab. Bruce's left hand met his wrist, not as a block, but as a catch. His right hand tapped the inside of the elbow. A small motion, a misalignment. Scar Knuckles stumbled forward into his own momentum, suddenly off balance, his grip turning into a clumsy lunge. Bruce stepped to the side and guided him, guided, not forced, into the mat. The man hit the canvas on his shoulder and rolled, more surprised than hurt, but the embarrassment was worse than any bruise. He popped up fast, eyes wide because he couldn't accept how easy it was. Vic tried again, voice rising with desperation disguised as confidence. All right, you got timing. Big deal. Timing doesn't mean fighting. Anybody can trip people if they know the angle. Vic, the older trainer in the gray hoodie said quietly. Stop. Vic ignored him like he hadn't spoken, because he couldn't stop now, not in front of this crowd, not after he'd built the whole night around making Bruce small. The shaved head leader finally found his voice. It came out hoarse. You think you're special? Bruce looked at him, expression unchanged. No. That answer hit the leader wrong. He'd expected arrogance, he'd expected a smirk. He got nothing, which meant he couldn't grab onto anything. The fifth man, the quietest one so far, with a narrow face and eyes that never softened, shifted behind the others. He wasn't built like the leader. He wasn't loud like Scar Knuckles. He moved like someone who didn't mind doing ugly things if they ended the moment faster. His hand dipped inside his jacket. A few people in the front row noticed and stiffened. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Metal flashed. A knife, short blade, not a showpiece, a working thing. The room's temperature dropped. Even the ones who had enjoyed the humiliation a minute ago didn't want this version. A knife meant consequences. A knife meant police. A knife meant blood on the mat that nobody could spin into just training. Vic's mouth opened as if to say something, but his pride blocked his survival instincts. If he called it off now, he'd look scared. If he did nothing, he'd be responsible. The moment pinned him too. The knife man stepped in, blade angled low. Now what, movie boy? Bruce's eyes moved to the knife. He didn't widen them. He didn't flinch. His breathing stayed the same. Put it away, Bruce said. The knife man smiled. Or what? Bruce didn't answer. He shifted his weight. The knife man lunged, fast, sloppy, committed. He wanted a cut, just one, something that would make Bruce jump, make him bleed, make him human in the worst way. Bruce moved first, not backward, not away, into the line of attack, but not into the blade. His left hand caught the knife wrist at the exact moment the arm extended. His right hand struck, not a big punch, not a haymaker, 2 short hits to the forearm and the nerve line near the wrist, sharp, precise, like tapping the off switch on a machine. The knife man's fingers opened without permission. The blade dropped. Bruce's foot slid, and the knife was gone from the center of the mat, kicked away with such casual accuracy it looked like the blade had simply decided not to be there anymore. The knife man froze, staring at his own empty hand like it had betrayed him. Bruce held the man's wrist for a fraction longer, just long enough to show control, then let go. Not a shove, not a throw. A release. The knife man staggered back, eyes flicking toward where the knife had skittered, then back to Bruce, trying to decide whether reaching for it would get him killed. Nobody in the crowd was laughing now. Nobody was filming. Even the men who had come for spectacle were watching like they'd accidentally wandered into something real and dangerous. The shaved head leader took one step forward again, rage finally catching up to his embarrassment. You think you can do that to us? Bruce didn't move. He didn't take a stance the crowd recognized. He simply stood, hands relaxed, shoulders loose, eyes steady. And something happened in that stillness that the room couldn't name. Because it wasn't the kind of stillness that meant hesitation. It was the stillness of a trap that had already been set. The stillness of a man who had measured every angle and found no need to rush. The leader looked at Bruce's hands, then at his face, then at the space between them, and for the first time, his confidence faltered without the help of pain. His body remembered the knee, the missing breath, the way the world had tilted. His mind tried to order his muscles forward. They didn't listen. Scar knuckles shifted as if to move in, then stopped. The slick-haired thug lifted his hands, then lowered them. The knife man's eyes darted, then fixed. The leader's jaw tightened, then slackened. 5 men, all built to dominate rooms, suddenly stood in front of a smaller man and did nothing. Then nobody moved. Not because Bruce posed like a hero, not because he shouted, because every instinct in their bodies was telling them the same thing at once. If they step in again, something worse than pain is waiting, something they won't be able to explain afterward. Bruce let the silence sit, long enough for everyone to feel who had control now. From the edge of the mat, Vic swallowed hard and tried to smile through it, but his voice came out thinner than he intended. "Okay," he said, forcing air into his chest. "Okay, that's enough." Bruce didn't look at him yet. He just stood there, calm in the middle of 5 men who suddenly needed permission to breathe. Vic Dalton's "okay" landed in the room like a coin dropped into a deep well. Small sound, no authority. Nobody looked at him. The crowd's attention stayed on the center of the mat, on the lean man who hadn't raised his voice once and had still turned 5 predators into statues. The shaved head leader swallowed. It wasn't fear the way he'd ever admit to fear. It was something worse. Uncertainty. He'd spent his whole life trusting that size was a law. Bruce had just shown him it was only a habit. Vic forced a laugh again, but it broke at the end. "You guys saw it, right? Quick hands. Nice timing. That's great for demonstrations." "Demonstrations," the older trainer in the gray hoodie repeated, disgusted. "Vic, you brought 5 guys in here." Vic snapped his head toward him. "I didn't bring anybody. They're customers. This is open mat." The trainer stepped closer, voice low so it carried. "Open mat doesn't mean corner a man at the exit." A woman near the back, someone's girlfriend maybe, someone who'd been smiling earlier, spoke up, loud before she could stop herself. "He spilled his drink on him." Another voice immediately followed, and somebody pulled a knife. The knife man flinched as if the words themselves were a hit. His eyes flicked toward where the blade had skittered under a folding chair. He didn't move for it. He couldn't. Vic's smile froze. "Nobody got hurt." "No," the trainer said, "because he didn't want to hurt them." That line did it. The room shifted in a way Vic couldn't control, because it framed everything correctly. This wasn't Bruce surviving. This was Bruce restraining himself. The shaved head leader tried to reclaim the moment with the only tool he had left. He stepped forward half a pace, forcing swagger back into his shoulders. "You think you're a teacher?" he said to Bruce, voice rough. "You gonna lecture us now?" Bruce finally turned his gaze to him fully, calm, not angry, not superior, just clear. "I'm not here to teach you," Bruce said. "Bruce. You're not here to learn." The words were simple, but the way he said them made the leader feel seen in a way that stripped him. Vic jumped in fast, desperate to put his name back on the moment. "Listen," he said, raising his hands like a mediator. "This is getting blown up. He proved he's got skill. Great, we're done. Everybody relax." The crowd didn't relax, because now they were watching Vic, not Bruce. And Vic looked like what he was, a man who'd lit a fuse and lost track of where the bomb was. Someone in the second row, a young guy in a white guy, eyes wide, said, "That's Bruce Lee." It wasn't shouted. It was spoken like a realization, like a name found on a label after you've already tasted the poison. The ripple moved instantly. Heads turned, whispers stacked. "No way." "Bruce Lee? That's him, the Green Hornet guy? The one who trains celebrities?" Vic's face twitched, just once, a betrayal, because the entire setup made sense now. The public test, the baiting, the desire to humble the skinny man. He hadn't wanted a random stranger to look weak. He'd wanted Bruce Lee to look fake. The shaved head leader heard the name and tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong. "That's not—" A man near the wall cut him off. "It is. I've seen him in person. That's him." The leader looked at Bruce again, and this time he wasn't seeing a small guy. He was seeing a reputation that reached beyond this gym, beyond this street, beyond his little world of intimidation. He felt the ground under him shift, and with the crowd now recognizing Bruce, the thugs couldn't win anymore. If they touched him again, it wasn't a street lesson. It was assault on a public figure, in front of witnesses with a knife involved. Consequences suddenly had faces. Vic tried to salvage what he could. Okay, so he's Bruce Lee. Fine, great, but this isn't a movie set. In the real world, numbers matter, size matters. You guys think you wanted numbers, the trainer said, stepping in front of Vic now. You brought 5. Vic's mouth opened, then closed, because he couldn't deny it without lying, and lying would only make the room uglier. A different voice from the crowd, older, steady. You set this up. That sentence cut through everything. It wasn't an accusation shouted in heat. It was a conclusion spoken by someone who had watched too carefully. Vic snapped. I didn't set up anything. He walked in here. He walked in and you singled him out, the woman said. You called him skinny. You made it a show. The shaved-head leader glared at Vic for the first time, not at Bruce. Because now he understood the truth. Vic hadn't just tried to humiliate Bruce. He'd also tried to use the thugs as tools and then hide behind them. You told us he was some punk, Scarknuckles muttered, eyes narrowing. You didn't say he was him. Vic's face went pale. I didn't. The knife man, still staring at his empty hand like it was a curse, whispered almost to himself, We're leaving. The leader didn't want to leave, not in front of a crowd, not with his pride hanging in rags, but he looked around and saw the room's eyes on him now, not amused, not scared, judging. And he realized there was no win left in staying. He backed up a step. His men followed, slow, careful, trying to make retreat look like a choice instead of a surrender. As they reached the edge of the mat, the leader forced one last line through clenched teeth, aimed at Bruce. This ain't over. Bruce didn't move. He didn't threaten. He didn't posture. He simply said, It is. 2 words, flat, final. Not a promise of violence, a statement of reality. The hierarchy had already been rewritten, and no amount of noise could undo it. The leader's eyes flickered. He wanted to say something else. He couldn't find anything that wouldn't sound like begging. He turned and walked out. The others followed, boots on concrete, leather creaking. A door opening too fast, hitting the wall, the same careless sound they'd entered with, except now it sounded smaller. When they were gone, the room stayed silent anyway. Vic tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't form a shape that mattered. The crowd didn't need his narration now. They'd watched the truth happen. Bruce stepped off the mat, walked to the chair, picked up his jacket, and slid it on. He wiped the soda from his sleeve with 2 fingers like it was nothing. His movements were calm, unhurried, like the whole scene had been a brief inconvenience. The trainer in the gray hoodie approached him cautiously, embarrassed on behalf of everyone. I'm sorry, he said. Bruce nodded once. It's fine. Then Bruce turned toward the door. A young guy in the white GI blurted out, Mr. Lee. Bruce paused just long enough to acknowledge him. The kid looked like he wanted wisdom, a speech, some heroic line to take home and repeat. Bruce gave him something simpler. Don't chase respect, he said quietly. Make yourself honest. And then he left. No music, no celebration, no victory lap. Just the sound of the door closing behind him and a room full of people still sitting in the shape of the moment because they'd just seen what real power looks like when it doesn't need permission.